Hello, this is John, the Bench Fisherman. Well, I messed that video up. I'm working on a Shakespeare Royal Maroon 2052 with a date code of ED, which I think is 1965. I took it apart. I had a really nice story I told about these reels, not this reel. But I'll go through that real quick, and then I'll cut away and do the cleaning and come back. But when I was a little kid, I couldn't have been very old, 6 or 7. My uncle wanted to take me fishing at Smith Mountain Lake, and I did catch some fish. But anyway, we didn't have any fishing gear. He didn't have any. I didn't have any. So we went over to a local sporting goods store. They weren't box stores back then like they are now. And it wasn't just a tackle shop. They sold everything, you know, for any kind of sport that was popular at the time. But he bought 2 reels. He bought this and a push button reel, which I want to think is a Johnson Century, because I caught my first fish at the ocean off of Johnson Century, but it was a borrowed reel. It wasn't mine. But I remember getting home with this little 2052, and I just thought, like, I felt like I was a pro bass fisherman. I had been watching all those shows, Bill Dance, the Honey Hole, you know, some of those other fish, Babe Winkleman, those guys. And I can remember going into my bedroom. I asked my uncle if I could look at it. He said, yeah. And I went in my bedroom. I got up on the bed like I was on a boat, and I would catch fish, you know, and I didn't have a rod yet. We hadn't bought rods. And I'd start reeling like I was fighting a fish in. But anyway, when we finally did get to go fishing with it, he had to help me, you know, and he used the spinning reel and I used the push button. But I don't think I ever caught a fish on that first one. But I did fish with that reel a lot when I finally really got into fishing later on, a couple years later. I fished quite a bit with that little reel, and I don't know what happened to my original 2052. And I probably loaned it out to a friend or something, and you know, it never made its way back, and you know, that happens. But I still have a love for these reels. I own several of them. I've got a couple in the box, you know, like brand new versions of them. They were our tanks of reels, and I wish I didn't lose all that footage of me taking it apart. These reels are just, they're about as hardy as it gets. And I love them, you know, and they led to my love for pin reels. Pin reels are spin reels, spin fishers, and the Dam Quicks. Those are the 3 reels back in the day that you couldn't beat them. They were overbuilt. They were tanks. And of course, you had Penn and Royal or Shakespeare were made in America, and the dams were made in Germany, West Germany, Berlin. And those were all really good reels if you wanted a spinning reel. In an ultralight, they were built as well as a much bigger reel in today's standards. But I'm gonna clean this up, and it's a complete reel. I'm only missing, and I wish I could have showed you how to take this apart, but I'm only missing the line out clicker, which I can make a new one. I just got to get some brass spring stock, and you basically just dig that old one out. You put a new one in there, and you kind of take a soldering iron and melt that plastic back around, and that little piece of brass sticks out and rubs on that star, and click, 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 and you're good to go. So I'll do that off camera, and we'll make this thing a real pretty little user reel. You know, it'll function really well. I don't think it's ever gonna make a shelf queen for anybody, but it'll make a nice reel to use. I'll be back when it's all clean. Hello, I'm back on this nice little Shakespeare 2052. Unfortunately, like I said in my prelude here, that I lost the footage of taking it apart. I wish you could have seen it. It was pretty locked up. beautiful little reel, but the lubricant in it was just done. It had gone from a lubricant to a glue basically, and you couldn't even turn the reel. And so I did my thing to it, cleaned it up good, and we're gonna put this thing back together and make a nice little reel for somebody. I don't think I'm gonna keep it. I've got several in my collection, as I've said already, but it'll make somebody a nice little reel. So let's just start out by putting the rotor together. Spring goes in like that, and your remember, get my fingers to work for me this morning. Well, I want to say it goes like that. No, that can't be right. We'll get it going here. Just give me a second. I want to say it's like that. Been a while since I've done one of these. These are really good reels, very well made. I want to say, like I said, I think this is an ED date code. I didn't look it up. And of course, my phone is recording, so I can't look it up on there. But I need to print that chart off. I've got it on my phone. I believe this makes it a, here we go, 65. I believe EE is 66. I always look for EEs because that's my birth year. It's 1966. So. And let's make sure it fires. There we go. And we'll lubricate those threads and put this piece here works as a counterbalance. And then we'll put this little piece, well, I don't want to do that, back together and put it in. Takes the roller in it. Roller goes either way. I don't think it matters on that. Just a dab of grease on there to keep those threads from locking up. And I'm not going to tighten that down just yet. I got to remember how this goes. I believe it goes like, no, don't think that's right. This. No. I'll figure it out in a minute. No. It seemed like I remember when I took it apart, it was a little bit bent, so we may have a little bit of an issue figuring it out. Or it needed to be bent, maybe that's what it was. Yeah, that's what it was. It needed to be bent. Yeah, so you want that to kind of ride in there. I've been fishing with these reels for a long time. In fact, one of the first spinning reels I ever touched was one of these. Yeah, I don't know if it's perfect yet, but we'll try it. Make sure the roller turns. It is. And there is the rotor. And when I get it all together, I can kind of look at this and make sure it's not something really not way off with it. But I think it's pretty close. May need to go that way just a little bit. All right. right. Okay, we got the rotor together. All right, remember I took the eccentric out of it. So we'll put that back in. The lever, I'll get you in frame here in just a minute, folks. Okay. The lever goes back on like that. We'll do just a little dab of grease right there, and I'll wipe off the excess later. You got one little screw goes in there. You have to get this eccentric together before you can put the main gear back in it, or the worm gear. Well, you can't. You don't have to do it before the worm gear, but it helps. Okay, let's do a little dab of grease down there. You've got spring has to go on first. So the spring goes in and sits down on that stud or post. And when you put the dog in, you gotta get that tab of the spring under like that. And then there's a C-clip to hold all that mess together, and it's a little bit difficult to get your fingers up in there on this small reel. Shoot. Oh, there's my pliers has some magnification or magnetism to them, and they're acting kind of funny. That's not really working the way I want it to. And that's the way it goes. All right. Let's go ahead and put the worm gear back in. The bearing was in good shape, so we're gonna put all of it back together. Let's lubricate that bushing down inside the body. Oh, and got my everything's a fight this morning. I've had my coffee. A little bit of lubrication in there because the bearings get stuck in these things really bad sometimes. And I'll lubricate the worm gear once I get it back in there. Sometimes you have to take something and tap these in. I'll take an old socket and put on there. It's not wanting to go back, and I see why. Oh my goodness, John, come on. There we go. All right, sometimes you use force and didn't need to. Anyway, now snap ring goes back in. Make sure it's seated good all the way around. Now we can put the rotor on it. This locking tab, if you see how it's got the two slots in there, well, you've got to get got to get lined up just like that, okay? Thinking out loud here, I left a couple pieces out. That's why that eccentric was acting the way it was. We'll fix that real quick. You know, there's two pieces laying there on the bench for no reason, right? Okay, we'll get back to that. Alright. You tighten that up. Take your screwdriver. And, well, that one's not going to bend because it's never been bent. Bend it up as far as you can with your screwdriver, and then grab your pliers and go into it. There you go. Now that will come loose. That's a good sounding bearing. Okay, so I put this together wrong. We'll go take it back apart. Let's try this again. I wonder why it was acting the way it was. Just, you know. We'll take this back out. The eccentric was way too loose. I was like, that just don't feel right. And then, of course, after I'm done putting it together, I look over and see that I've still got parts sitting around. Because it's missing two washers out of it. There's no way it was ever going to go together right. I think that went to the outside, actually. I probably have a schematic on this around here somewhere, but you know, it'd make too much sense to go get that. Right. Washer, black brass washer goes in there. Then your eccentric. Hold on to that. The wavy washer was out here on the outside. It should function as it should. There we go. That's more like it. That's how it's supposed to be. Okay. Now you can put the spring back in. Put your dog in there, and then I'll get to fight that snap ring again, because one time is never enough on this channel. Oh me. There we go. Now let's see if that doesn't work a little bit more. Yeah, see, that's perfect. Okay, we are back on track. Let's grease that worm gear up really good. Now, this had some corrosion to it, and I cleaned it as best I could. But I need to polish it. So I'm going to take some emery cloth I swear I've had that emery cloth 20 years down here on this bench. The stuff just lasts forever. Polish that up so it'll slide or spin inside that bushing really well. And test fit it. And you don't have to go in from the inside. You can go in from the outside. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. So that gets oiled. So I'm not going to put any oil in that just yet. I am going to put grease on that shaft, on the gear. Not going to do it up like it was when it came apart. It had way too much grease in there. I guess that's just how they did it from the factory back then, but it was pretty dang full. Okay, we'll put that in. And we can go ahead and oil that shaft. And then a little grease where the threads go in the handle. Go ahead and thread the handle in. A little bit of oil on the handle. Tighten that handle up pretty good. Okay, so we got that working as it should. Where in the world did that fall out of? That wasn't in there. It had to have fallen off this handle. Well, that's odd. I don't remember seeing that when I took it apart. I'd almost have to go back and look at the video here and see where it fell out at, but that's okay. We're just gonna, I'm assuming it went, yeah, that's where it went. It's down in there. Okay, so if you wind up with a shim on your workbench, it goes in there, and it just fell out on me. I didn't notice that when I was cleaning it, that it went there. You learn something new every day. All right, let's take two on the, because we can't do anything once on this channel. We got to do it 2 or 3 times. Okay. That's nice and smooth. Okay. The shaft. Yeah, it feels pretty good. We'll put some oil on it. Slide it down in there, line your holes up. You got a pin that goes in there. Make sure it gets into that. It goes through the shaft. There's a hole in the shaft. And then when you crank it, that's how it's supposed to work. That's the reel pretty much. I'll put the cover back on. I'll put the drag back together. It is missing the little line out clicker. I haven't had a chance to make one for it. I can make one. It's just, it hasn't been high on the priority list this week. So before it gets sold, I'll either find one of my spare spools and put on it, or I'll make a line out clicker for it. I think I've got several spare spools in a box somewhere for these things. I buy every one of them I can find. Probably one of the finest little ultralights ever made. Now you got, pay attention to this, there's 3 leather washers, and you got a smaller leather washer that actually goes down here. And I'm going to treat these leather washers with some cowls to keep them soft. They are starting to show a little bit of age. Now, on this one you get a leather washer. Gosh, come on. Like that. Keyed washer. Leather washer. Eared washer, and the last leather washer. I don't think you could put too much grease on these little ultralights. You're not going to fight a big fish on them anyway. If you're running 4-pound Tesla reel, which that's all I'd ever run on it, maybe 6 at the most, you only need a pound or 2 of drag. Now to get this back in there, a little bit of a trick to it. Got to get it centered up. Take you a socket. It's about the right size, like that, and you're going to carefully pound that retainer down in there, and it's not behaving real nicely. Once you get it started, you can take a punch, or I can use this Delrin here. Oh gosh, come on. There we go. And that just retains it. It doesn't do anything but retain it. Some reels would have a snap ring or something on there. And of course, like I said, I'm missing that. I'll have to take my Dremel and cut that out. Pull this piece of brass out, or spring steel. And you can get spring steel. You can go to Ace Hardware, wherever, and just get a piece of spring steel, and you'll heat it up, bend you a U in it, and put it down in there after it's dried, after it's cooled off. Clip off the length of it where it'll click on this, and then melt the plastic back in, and it'll be like brand new. Line out clickers are not the end all if you don't have it. I prefer it because when I'm fighting a fish, I don't want to look down and see if my spool's moving or not. I want to hear it moving, so that way I'll quit cranking. If you keep cranking while your line's going out, you're just putting twist in line. Or if you're cranking and you're not moving any line in, you're just putting twist in it, you know. So this has got plenty of drag. It's just, you know, you can fight a nice fish on that. But there it is. That's a Shakespeare Royal Maroon is what us reel guys nicknamed these reels. 2052. The first spinning reel I ever held in my hands as a kid. I didn't actually own the reel; it was my uncle's reel. But I thought I was Bill Dance sitting there on my bed, acting like my bed was a bass boat, and I would catch fish and reel them in all day long. Childhood memories, folks. That's what this whole thing's about, you know. The bearing's got a little swirl, a little swish to it, but that's not bad. It's a fairly smooth reel. It will be for sale. I don't see any point in me keeping it. I've got enough of these things. Lots of memories. Memories from way back and memories of late too. Really cool little reel. I still use them to fish with. Everything's functioning. Let's see if the bail flips. Yep. Nice and smooth, nice and crisp. The anti-reverse works. And you can fold this bail for transport. You can fold the handle for transport. It folds up in a nice, neat little package. There's just an idea of what size this reel is. It'd be equivalent to a Dam 110 or a Dam, yeah, probably a 110, and a Pin 716, 714. It's right in between those two. That's what I like about this reel. It's kind of a nice little light reel. It's not Pin calls theirs an ultralight and an ultra sport. This is somewhere in between the 716 and 714. One of my favorite little reels. Fun to fish with. There it is. This is John, Vintage Fisherman. Please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.